Hello, everyone. It is now the top of the hour, so it is noon in Santa Barbara, California, where fielding administrative offices are. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you're joining us from today. So glad that you're here. Before we jump into the presentation, I wanted to start with a few housekeeping items. Today's event is being recorded, so in order to mitigate distractions and ensure we have a pleasant experience for our live attendees as well as those that may view this recording later, we encourage you to keep your microphone on mute throughout the presentation and keep your video turned off. Please feel free to type your questions in the chat. As you'll see when we reach the agenda slide, we will have time at the end of today's presentation to address any questions you may have. Today's presentation is part 2 of our virtual open house series, application tips. And first I wanted to start with a little bit about why we are hosting this series. As I count down, we have an event every week leading up to the application deadline for our summer 2021 doctoral programs. And we designed this series with you in mind. We know that you have a ton of questions and concerns and things that you're thinking about as you're preparing to apply or just considering a graduate program. And we wanted to make sure that we gave you the opportunity to not only receive the information that you need, but also to get a glimpse into who we are, what our culture is like, what our support system is like. Make sure that you're introduced to resources and people that are going to help you not only through the application process, but as a student and beyond. Today specifically, we're talking about application tips. And this presentation is for anyone out there who's ever wondered, what is that committee thinking? What are they doing with each of these pieces of the application? Are they even reading my personal statement? I graduated 20 years ago. How relevant is my undergraduate degree and my GPA then to what I want to do now? So this is really meant to go beyond just walking you through the application process at Fielding and to give you true insights into what types of things the committee is thinking and best practices in how you approach each aspect of the application. My name is Erica Fichter. I serve as Director of Recruitment and Admission at Fielding Graduate University. I've been in my role here for just about 2 years now, but I have served in graduate admissions for a decade now. And I've sat on panels both domestically and internationally talking about this exact same thing, how to approach your application for graduate school, what types of things the committee is looking for, and providing some best practices. I truly love what I do. This is one of my favorite parts. I know that it seems so mysterious and nebulous, but I really love the opportunity to really break that down and take away some of that anxiety and some of those barriers and really make sure that you're confident as you approach your application. But I couldn't do anything that I do without the support and all of the work of my incredible admissions team here at Fielding that many of you are probably familiar with these names and maybe faces. I'm not going to take over for them. I'm going to let them introduce themselves to you, but I just wanted to say that they are truly a wonderful resource. We work very closely together to ensure that each of you have what you need throughout the admissions process and to make sure that you're making the best decision for yourself. So with that, I will turn it over starting with Caroline Wedderburn, our Senior Admissions Advisor.
Thank you, Erica. And it's so great to see many of you here whom we've already spoken with, and just a great opportunity to learn more. So thank you for joining us. So again, my name is Caroline Wedderburn. I'm the Senior Admissions Advisor for the programs within our School of Leadership Studies. And I've been with Fielding for 2.5 years now. As an admissions advisor, I really enjoy hearing about what you're already doing, as well as your motivations and goals to bring about positive changes in your respective fields, communities, and organizations. So thank you again for being here today and allowing us to be part of your higher education journeys. And Brian?
Thank you, Erica, and thank you, Caroline. And thank you, everyone, for being here. My name is Brian Wallen, and I'm the admissions advisor for the clinically oriented programs here at Fielding. It's so rewarding for us to be able to assist you in deciding if fielding is the right fit for you and to see you take the next steps towards achieving your goals, especially when we have the opportunity to celebrate your future successes as fielding graduates. Just a quick note, if there is anyone here who's interested in our clinical psychology programs, I just want to highlight that today's presentation is geared towards our non-clinical programs, so much of the information presented in the first part of the presentation today may not be directly applicable to you. We do have an application workshop designed specifically for our clinical psychology programs, and that's scheduled for Saturday, February 27th at 10 a.m. Pacific time, and we'll share a link to register for that webinar in the chat box here. We definitely encourage you to attend that webinar if you are intending to apply to our clinical psychology programs. We'll also be sharing some information about the layout of the application portal today, and that layout will look very similar regardless of the program that you're applying to. So if you want to stay tuned for that part of the presentation, we encourage you to do so. Thank you everyone for the opportunity to be here today, and now I'll pass it over to my colleague here, Ignacio.
Thank you, Brian. Hi, everyone. I am Ignacio Vargas, and I am the admissions advisor for the Media Psychology and Infant and Early Childhood Development programs here at Fielding. It is a pleasure to be here to present the following information to all of you, and I have been in contact with some of you as well, so it's wonderful to see you here. I love learning about your interest and desire to advance further or to navigate a career change where Fielding excels in being a launching pad for growth professionally and personally. If you have any questions about the programs, you can ask us in the general chat and we'll get to them at the end. In addition, you can also message me privately in the chat and I'll be able to answer some of your questions there as well. Now, I'll pass it over to my colleague, Jane.
Thank you very much. Hello and welcome. My name is Jane Schuster. I'm the Marketing and Recruitment Coordinator here at Fielding Graduate University. I actually may have chatted with some of you. I'm on live chat from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. Pacific time answering questions Monday through Friday. So I hope that I'll connect with you if I haven't already. I also play a big part in the email communications that you receive. And I work closely with Erica as well as Caroline, Brian, and Ignacio. And as a team, we come up and we plan what messages would be helpful for you to receive. So thank you very much for joining us and enjoy the presentation.
Thank you. You are all rock stars, and I appreciate you all very much. I'm so glad that you can be here with us today. Reviewing a quick agenda, we're going to talk, as I mentioned, about committee considerations and the primary things that they're thinking about as they're reviewing your materials. We're going to review those admissions documents, talk about some best practices as you approach each of them. Brian will walk you through the application portal, as he mentioned, and Caroline will discuss our next steps. And then as we stated, we'll have it open for questions at the end. The primary purpose of today's presentation really is to demystify the admissions process. And something that seems so nebulous and so mysterious is something that can really be boiled down into three major things that the committee is thinking about. And this is a very general presentation, so whether you're considering Fielding or any other graduate school, it will be helpful, relevant information for you. However, as Brian mentioned, you definitely want to connect with the schools and the admissions offices that you're thinking about to ensure that you are following their specific admissions guidelines and meeting the expectations that they have for your application. So as Brian mentioned, our PhD in clinical psychology program specifically has very specific things they're looking for. So we would encourage you to attend that application workshop. But in general, for holistic decision-making at the graduate level, this presentation will provide you with some great general information to help you kind of wrap your head around each of the aspects of the admissions process. What is the committee thinking? As I mentioned, it really boils down to three things. Is this the right program? Is it going to help you actually accomplish your goals? Are we the right place for you to pursue your education? Is there a mutual fit there? And is this the right time? Do you have the time? Is there sufficient evidence that you're going to be successful in this program at this time if we were to admit you? I want to start by giving an overview briefly of the programs that we do offer at Fielding before I move on to the committee considerations. Within our School of Psychology, we offer an APA accredited PhD in clinical psychology, doctoral, master's, and certificates in media psychology, a PhD in infant and early childhood development with an emphasis in mental health. We have certificates, a 1-year online post-baccalaureate certificate in clinical psychology to prepare you to be a successful PhD candidate. And we have a respecialization program in clinical psychology and a 2-year neuropsychology specialization training program. Within our School of Leadership Studies, we offer doctoral degrees in education, human development, and organizational development and change, as well as a degree completion program for those who may have recently completed doctoral credits. We have a newly relaunched and refreshed 1-year virtual master's degree in organizational development and leadership, and we offer certificates in evidence-based coaching. And our program is an ACTP certified program through the ICF. Now that we've talked a little bit about the programs, going back to that, committees wondering, is this the right program for you? How do we assess that? What are the documents that we're looking at that help the committee to make that decision? And the first is your personal statement. And I'll start by saying in the following slides, we're going to go into each of the aspects of the application and talk about best practices. But first, I just wanted to briefly show what we're looking for and how we determine if it's the right program, place, or time. So the right program. With your personal statement, we're looking at, how have you expressed your goals and what you want to accomplish. Your letters of recommendation also help to tell us that information. And when we get to that slide, I'll talk a little bit more about how that happens. Your resume or CV can tell us where you've been, and that can help us to determine if this is the right program and it's going to help you achieve your goals based on what you told us in your personal statement. And also, never take for granted that faculty and staff engagement. So as you engage with the admissions staff or tuition and financial aid staff or the faculty, all of those pieces of engagement and what you've expressed to us are taken into consideration in determining, is this actually the right program? Is it going to help you to actually meet your goals? Because the last thing we want to do is put you into a program where we don't understand if it's actually going to help you to do that, because then you're not going to be fulfilled and it's not a win for anyone. So that's why that is so important to us. And before I move to the next slide, I do want to say it's perfectly fine if you don't know exactly what you want to do. When I say that, I don't mean that, I want to have X position in Y company or start, Z organization. It doesn't have to be that specific, but just some general sense of what you're hoping to accomplish with this program is really what we're looking for. The next piece is the right place. The first part of our open house series was all about fielding. We did record that and it is live on our open house landing page if you didn't have the opportunity to view it. But we want to make sure there is a good fit there. And if you've seen any of my videos in the past, I do talk about fit a lot because that is so important. Making sure that it's the right culture, the right type of community, even the right modality and what you're looking for in your education experience. That's going to shape your entire experience during the program and after graduation as an alumni. So that piece is very important for both us as well as it is important to you that it is the right place for you. So we look to things such as your personal statement and why are you telling us you're interested in our programs? And what are we learning about you that might help us to see if you'd be a good fit here, if you would be happy here, if it would feel like, I'd like to say if it kind of feels like home, just feels comfortable. We also look at those letters of recommendation. And again, when we get to that references slide, I'll talk more about how we do that. And then again, faculty and staff engagement. So you'll see some of these pieces come up time and time again, and really trying to make the point that each of them really is important. And so, how you interact with faculty and staff also gives us a sense of, are we a good fit for you? And last but definitely not least, is this the right time? Are you ready to be successful? The last thing we want to do is put you in a situation where we're not confident that you're going to be successful at this time. So we look to many of your materials to make that determination. Again, going back to your personal statement and what you're saying is why you're wanting to do this program, why you're wanting to do it here, why you're wanting to do it now. We look at those letters of recommendation also to help us get a sense of that. Your academic performance, historic performance, gives us that sense of, are you academically ready to be successful? And as well as, do you have the time to dedicate to be successful? And then that critical thinking and writing sample, not all programs will require this. The doctoral programs at Fielding require one or the other or both, but that also gives us a sense of your academic preparedness in starting a doctoral level program. And again, as I mentioned, that faculty and staff engagement helps us to determine that as well. Now that we've gone a little bit into how each of your pieces of materials play into those big three buckets of, program, place, and time, I want to dive a little bit more into best practices as you approach each of these aspects. And what I hope you walk away with is an understanding that there's no arbitrary part of the application. Each of the programs within Fielding, let alone outside of Fielding that you may consider, ask for very specific things. And there's a reason for each of the piece of the application that they ask for. It's not just to check a box. So I hope that gives you confidence that we value your time and the time that you put into those materials, and that we really do review each and every piece of the material that you submit and very holistically. So each aspect is important and none of them are taken for granted. Diving a little bit into best practices, I want to start with a statement of purpose, or it could be called a personal statement. There's many different ways that it could be framed by the program or by the university, but it's going to be something, something with the purpose of getting to know you. This is your first opportunity to introduce yourself to the program and to the school. Even if you have, had those interactions via phone or Zoom or webinars, this is your formal introduction to the university. So it's so important because that's where we get a sense of who you are, aside from your resume that shows us what you've done, your education that shows us what you've studied, but who are you as a person and what do you want out of this? What is that story? So that piece is very important, that it helps us to understand your goals. And again, making those determination of, are we making the right decision if we move you forward? We also want to know, why are you interested in this university? So with those types of things in mind, some of the do's and don'ts, be authentic, be yourself. Don't Google how to write a grad school essay and just write what you think the committee wants to hear. And the reason that I say that is and I'm just going to take a moment and add a disclaimer again that what the clinical PhD program is looking for in their statement of purpose looks different than this. So again, I would recommend that you attend the application workshop on the 27th for specifically the clinical program. But for the remainder of the programs, we want to get a sense of who you are. If you write what you think the committee wants to hear, I know I can speak, from my own experience of looking up from an essay and thinking, I don't know who this person is. I've just read, all these pages, but I know nothing about this person. I don't feel like I walked away with a sense of who they are and how we might be a fit and how we might be able to help them fulfill their goals. So that really should be a relief, that you're empowered to speak with your authentic voice. But please, it seems so elementary to say it, please proofread. Check your grammar, check your punctuation, have someone else proofread it for you. Make sure that you're proofreading and that you're putting your best foot forward here. Please don't disregard specific instructions, or this kind of goes along with using the same essay for each school. So our programs, many of our programs, as well as others out there, they may ask for a statement of purpose, but they may also have specific points that they want you to address. So they'll let you know, speak to this, this, and this. Make sure that you're doing that. Make sure that you have actually addressed anything the school put out there, because there's a reason that they're asking you those specific questions. Again, it's not arbitrary. So if there are specific questions that a school is asking you, don't just write one general statement of purpose and send the same one to all the schools. Sure, there's probably a lot of very consistent information, but make sure you're tailoring it for what the school's asking for and for how you can speak to why you're interested in that school. We completely understand you're probably considering, more than one school. So, but make sure that you're tailoring when you have your, your list of your top 3 or 5 or however many that are in your top list. Make sure that you're tailoring that essay to what they want to know and to why you're interested in that school. And again, another thing that helps with that is that you may accidentally write in there the wrong name of the wrong school. I've seen that many times where they submit, an admissions essay to my school, but they have, a name of another school in there about why they want to attend, University XYZ. That's not our school. So, just takes a few extra minutes to proofread and making sure that what you're uploading is the right document. And that you're really telling that story about what you want with this program, why you want to study at that school. Another thing I do encourage you to do, in most cases, again, for the clinical program, attend that app workshop, but fill in the blanks. If there are things that you think the committee is going to wonder, take that opportunity in your statement of purpose and fill in those blanks, because committees can get very creative and make up all kinds of things, whether that be, maybe gaps in your resume, whether that be, a less than stellar GPA, show accountability. So, I encourage you to be honest, but be accountable. And the biggest thing is show why whatever might have been an issue is not going to impede you from being successful in graduate school. So tell that story for them so they can understand. How do we feel confident that whatever might have transpired is not going to affect your ability to be successful now? So think about those things as you approach that. And again, I also want to say before I move on, my entire team is here specifically to talk to you about your goals, your journey, what you're hoping to accomplish. So please feel free to reach out to us to set an appointment to talk specifically about you and what's best for you in your application. Next is the letters of recommendation. Why do we ask for them? First of all, not all programs ask for letters of recommendation. At Fielding, all of the programs within our School of Psychology require letters of recommendation, but not for the ones in SLS programs. So find out, obviously, if the programs you're applying to require letters of recommendation. If they do, the reason that they do is to get to know you objectively, to get that understanding of how will you interact with us? How do you operate in a team? What type of leadership style do you present, or all of those different kinds of things that the program may be looking for. And that's another thing that's important, whether it's within Fielding or another program, is to understand what that school is looking for, what that program is looking for, as far as who prepares your references for you. For instance, it may be specifically that they're looking for academic references, or they're looking for professional references. So it's important to understand what they're looking for with those references to make sure that you select the best references that you can to submit the most competitive application that you can. And your references help us to understand your personal and professional goals, and again, to kind of connect those dots and understand, is this program going to help them achieve their goals? Do they feel confident about that? And like I mentioned, helping understand how you fit in the program and interact with others. So do's: prepare your references. Ask them, can you submit a strong recommendation for me? Give them that opportunity to state, because someone might say, yes, I'll submit a recommendation for you. But it behooves of you to ask if they can submit a strong recommendation for you. But prepare them. If you haven't talked to them in a while, maybe send them a copy of your resume. let them know what type of program you're applying for and why. Make sure that they're prepared, because the more they understand and know up front, the better they're going to be able to craft that letter to help us understand those things as well. So make sure that you're preparing them. And again, selecting carefully, understanding what the program is looking for, and making sure that you're making that right selection. An example might be, if a program is looking for someone that can specifically speak to work ethic or leadership or projects that you've worked on or something like that, then it's much more effective for maybe a direct supervisor or a vendor or a client to write that for you than maybe the CEO of the organization that you saw in an elevator once, for instance. So understanding what that school is looking for can help you, select the best references. Also note that most of the time, if there is a limit on the number of letters of recommendation or whatever that number is, generally that's the limit that you can submit. There are sometimes exceptions, so I encourage you to ask the programs that you're looking for. But specifically at Fielding, if we require 2 or 3, you can only submit 2 or 3. So we want to make sure that you select the best ones. And also understand how each of the school accepts their letters of recommendation. For instance, at Fielding, we actually have an electronic form. When you're completing your online application, you enter the name and email address of your references, and they receive an automated message from us electronically that they complete and send back to us. So many schools do that nowadays, but it is helpful to understand how they're going to be accepting those letters of recommendation if you need to turn them in via email or any other way. It's just helpful to know how they're going to be accepting those. Please don't ask a family member. We would hope and assume that your mom would write you an excellent letter of recommendation, but that's not going to really help you in the process. So again, just be careful who you're asking for. If you maybe work for a family business and there are those kinds of situations where maybe your mother, father, aunt, uncle was a direct supervisor or did serve in that capacity, then talk to us about other ways that you might be able to do that. Again, client, vendor, past faculty, something like that. Don't assume that they know what to say. Again, that's why it's helpful to prepare them. If they don't know why, for instance, you're wanting to pursue a program, I've seen recommendations that say, I'm not certain of what they're hoping to accomplish, but I'm sure they're going to be great. Well, you can write all the superlatives about how great a person is, but if you don't understand, if you're not helping the committee to understand how this program is going to help you achieve their goals, then it's not as strong of a reference. Another thing is to understand if there are time limits, so out of date letters. So at Fielding, we have a 1-year requirement that they expire within a year. So you have options to reach back out and resubmit a letter to your reference and ask if there's any changes. But we want to see, most programs are going to want to see something up to date. Moving on to resume and CV. Sorry, okay, we received a question, but I'll hold off on that till we get through this section. Moving on to the resume and CV. First, I want to talk a little bit about the difference between a resume and a CV. If you're not completely familiar, a program may ask for one or the other. They may specify resume, CV, or they may say resume or CV. The resume is going to be specific to your professional achievements or professional experience, educational experience, and maybe relevant hobbies or interests or organizations. The CV is going to be much more extensive, and it's going to have that as well as any journals or publications that you have done or been a part of, presentations that you've done at conferences, research that you've been a part of. So it's going to be much more extensive on that CV than a resume. So it's helpful to understand if someone is looking for one or the other. Again, we ask for it to get to know you. Where have you been? What has led you to this place in your career, in your life? What has your educational journey been? What experiences have you had? And that helps us to get that full picture of how that has shaped you personally and professionally, and how it shaped your goals. So with your resume, be professional. That it is a resume, so you want to submit a professional resume. When you have the opportunity, focus on accomplishments or what within that particular job or position that you held that will actually signify how you're going to be successful in the program or with what you're ultimately hoping to accomplish. Be transparent. I do highly encourage you to make sure that the dates are on there, so that the committee can have a temporal understanding of your experience. Don't encourage you to focus on listing every little task that you did in the job, or to use too much jargon. If it's something that the programs may not be familiar with, and I know that we all have a ton of acronyms, we certainly do in higher education, but if you can avoid that, we encourage you to do that. And don't overlook school-specific requirements. At Fielding, we do not have page limits on this, but some programs might. So if you do have if you are applying to a program and they state 2-page resume, then you want to try and keep that to 2 pages. Again, we don't have that at Fielding, but I just encourage you to keep those things in mind. And then moving on to the writing sample and/or reflective essay, which may or may not be required. At Fielding, we require one or both in all of our doctoral programs. And this is going to be in addition to that personal statement. Again, as with all of the other materials, it helps us to get to know you, but really it's helping us to understand what are your critical thinking skills? What is your academic writing ability? What have you been able to do in the past? How do you put an argument together? So, again, when you're approaching these, first thing I would suggest is please don't wait until the last minute. This is usually what we see submitted towards the last minute, but just for your own sanity, I would encourage you to try and start these early so that it doesn't cause you that undue stress trying to get it done at the last minute. It's your opportunity to showcase your position on the subject. I will say, at Fielding, our students are individuals, and our faculty listen to them as individuals and what they bring to the table as a professional, your years of experience, your outlook based on, like where what you've been through and what you've accomplished and what you've overcome. There's so much you have specifically to bring to the table, and it's your opportunity to really showcase your position. Again, please proofread, because this is something that they're looking at in terms of what is your level of academic writing ability. So you want to put your best foot forward there. Again, please do not wait until the last minute. This next bullet under don't is really helpful for most aspects of the application, not to reuse old material. So for instance, say you've applied to a program and unfortunately you did not receive the admission decision that you wanted. If you're going to reapply, which is perfectly fine to reapply, you don't want to use the same materials that you submitted last time and hope for a different result. So we do encourage you for the things that can change, like in the next slide, we'll talk about transcripts. You can't change your undergraduate degree, but for the things that you can improve and make better, we definitely encourage you to take that opportunity and show the committee that you're trying to refine and improve. So definitely not the best idea to reuse old samples. And the last bullet is just not to complain about the articles. There are limitations, open source limitations on what I know that we put out there, as I'm sure many other schools. So probably not the best impression to complain about the articles that they're asking for in the admissions process. Not that you aren't entitled to that view or that thought, but probably not a great idea to complain about it in the admissions process. Finally, we're going to talk about transcripts. This is the one aspect of your application or your background you cannot change. We don't expect you, specifically with your undergraduate degree, right? And there are programs out there, including fieldings, that may require undergraduate transcripts. They may give you the option to submit undergraduate or graduate transcripts. They may require both. So it's important to know those requirements. And for that reason, I did put a direct link to our program requirements page. And specifically under education and transcripts, you can read for each of our programs what those requirements are. But we don't expect you to go back and do another undergraduate degree. So this is something that is an important topic. Why? Of course, it's important to get to know you and what your academic history has been and determine your readiness for graduate level work. But it is, it's understandable that we need to be realistic and consider all of your options. So if you were someone who's undergraduate, you didn't perform as strong as you wanted in your undergraduate degree, there are other ways that you can showcase. So, thinking about the admissions process kind of as your application as a whole pie, GPA, and because we do have GPA requirements, GPA in that aspect, your undergraduate performance is a piece of that pie. So if that piece is maybe a little bit smaller than what the program is looking for, we're going to be looking for other things to help round that out. So do you have extensive work experience in that area? Have you taken graduate level coursework and been successful in that and shown that you can be successful in an academic setting at a graduate level? So there are things that you can do to help basically fill that in or overcome those things. But I know that is generally speaking, when I talk with people applying to graduate school, undergraduate GPA is a big area of concern. Another thing I want to point out is that at Fielding, you will see that all of our programs may have GPA requirements. If you do not meet those requirements, we do have a process by which you are still reviewed, and all of the materials you submitted, as I mentioned before, are reviewed to determine is there sufficient evidence and all of these others throughout your experience, professionally, other academic experience, research experience. Is there enough evidence here that we still believe that you could be successful? So still would receive a review, but do know that there are those requirements. But again, being realistic about, if you're applying and you're right out of undergrad and you didn't perform so great and you have no work experience and, there's nothing much else that the committee can go on, then just be realistic about that. Think about your options. Could you consider another master's program or taking courses as a non-degree seeking student? And again, exhibiting that self-awareness. So this goes back to that personal statement spot where if you didn't perform well in undergrad, maybe something happened, working full-time or, just 18 and weren't really sure what you wanted to do. And so, didn't go to class as much as you should. I mean, there's so many different things that you can be honest, but also, accept accountability, but say, I have a personal story about this. When I was applying for my master's degree, I had to address this. My undergraduate GPA was not what I hoped it could be. And it was simply, I was 18, I didn't have the self-discipline yet, didn't know what I wanted to do yet. But by the time I was applying to my master's program and had work experience, I explained that I have grown. I'm not that person anymore. I understand that other people rely on me to be, XYZ. This is what I want to do. This is why I'm certain that will not impede me from being successful here. So I helped to fill in that blank with the committee and exhibit that self-awareness without placing blame, without making excuses. And that's the big piece, is not making excuses, but talking about what happened and talking about why it's not a concern. Don't wait to order your transcripts. There are different ways to order transcripts, and I'm not going through all of that today specifically, but we can certainly get that information to you. But it's good to understand how you receive transcripts from your university, whether you can request them online or how you need to do that. But we encourage you not to wait to order to make sure that there's ample time to receive your transcripts. Now that I've talked a little bit in general about transcripts, I'm going to turn it over to Caroline, and she's going to talk about international transcripts.
Thank you, Erica. And so yes, if you did earn your degree outside of the US, there is an additional step. So we just wanted to cover that so you have this information handy. Uh, if your degree was earned outside of the US, you will need to request an international transcript evaluation. This is to establish equivalency with a regionally accredited US degree. You'll need to request an evaluation that lists each course that you took with grades and a cumulative GPA. This is typically called a course-by-course evaluation. And you would provide an official transcript to the evaluation service according to their process and request that they send the evaluation directly to Fielding. And we accept evaluations from a number of different agencies, which are listed on our website with links specific to their website for more details on their specific process. So be sure to take a look at what they're asking for, follow their instructions, and again, we're all here to help though, so please reach out to us if you're unsure if an international transcript is required. Say if you earned your master's degree within the US and the particular program you're applying for only requires one official transcript for one degree, you might not need to order it. So again, please reach out to us with any questions, but there are instructions on our website for ordering those evaluations, which can take about 3 weeks. So again, as Erica mentioned, be sure to order these transcripts early, whether it's your official transcript earned in the US or an evaluation for a degree earned outside of the US.
Thank you so much, Caroline, for that. So before we move on to Brian to review the admissions or the application at Fielding, I just want to summarize that what the committee is thinking about and the way you should be approaching your application is this the right program? Is this the right place? And is this the right time? And I know we have a couple of questions, and as soon as we get through the application portal, then we will address everyone's questions.
Thank you, Erica. So I want to start this section by pointing out that you may log in and out of the application portal as needed all the way up until the application deadline for your program. Now, our application deadlines at Fielding are generally 11:59 p.m. Pacific time, so be sure to make sure you account for that timing to get everything submitted. We definitely recommend not saving it for the last minute, just in case there are any tech issues or problems with your computer in submitting. But you can get started on your application whenever you're ready. To get started with an application, you can navigate to nearly any of the Fielding web pages to locate a yellow Apply Now button in the upper right-hand corner. After clicking the Apply Now button, you'll see this login screen. If you've already created an account, you can go ahead and log in using your email address that you used to create the account and your password. Or if you are a new user, you can also click down at the bottom to create a new account. You can also reset your password using the Forgot Your Password button there. Once you click on the New User button, you'll be taken to this page where you can register your account and select the program and start term you're interested in applying for. After logging in or creating your account, you'll be taken to the application portal homepage. Down the road, this is where you'll find your application checklist to keep up to date on everything that's still needed for your application. But to work on or get started with your application, you'll go ahead and click on the My Applications tab towards the top of the page. Once you click on the My Applications tab, you may see one or multiple applications listed depending on if you've applied or started an application before. Be sure to click on your active application as indicated by the word active in parentheses following the application ID. Before the full application is populated, you'll need to complete the first 3 sections in this portal. So those are the demographic information, the contact information, and the program information sections. Once these sections are completed, the rest of your application will become available. Keep in mind that the required fields are indicated by the red line to the left of the fillable section. All of these sections will need to be completed in order to submit your application. You can see here in this slide that once the first 3 sections are complete, the entire application is populated for you. And the rest of the application will allow you to complete section or one section at a time, so you can jump around from section to section as you'd like. All of the instructions to complete the application are included within the various sections, but be sure to read them carefully. Pay particular attention to how to order transcripts or an international transcript evaluation. I know Caroline talked about that a little bit today, but you'll have that information for you again in the portal itself. Also, as Erica mentioned, for letters of recommendation, if required for your specific program, it requires you to enter in the names and contact information for your recommenders. Then we send an email out to your recommenders on your behalf requesting that they upload a letter to a uniquely generated portal. Also, if you're looking for any prompts for writing samples, reflective essays, or statements of purpose, you can find those within the supplemental application documents section of the portal here. This is also where you'll upload the PDF copies of those materials. Other than that, you can progress through the application, completing section by section, just however you please in any order. Finally, once everything is complete, you can go ahead and submit your application. Now, normally there's a $75 application fee, but as Jane mentioned, as a thank you for joining us at our open house series, we will be applying a fee waiver to everyone's account. You don't have to do anything to make that fee waiver active. Once we apply it to your account, it activates upon completion of your application. So when you go to submit your application, you won't be prompted for any kind of payment. So all you'll have to do is ensure that all the fields are completed, and then you can click the Submit Application button down at the bottom of this page. We have lots of resources and upcoming events to help you learn more and to plan ahead. So now Caroline will take over and talk through some of the next steps that you can take in this process.
Thank you, Brian. We understand everyone's situation is different, and you may have particular questions, which is why we're all here to help. If you haven't already spoken with an admissions advisor, you're welcome to connect with us by phone or email. If your schedule is full and you need to coordinate a call ahead of time, we're happy to do that as well. In addition to speaking with admissions advisors and program directors, our financial aid team is available to speak with even before you decide to apply. You can connect with them by phone or use their appointment calendar to schedule a time to meet with them through Zoom. They're available through email as well if you just want to send some questions. And our next virtual open house series is actually dedicated to this topic, funding your education. That is part 3 next week on February 18th, 2021 at 9:30 a.m. Pacific. So be sure to join us for that if you'd like more details. Otherwise, all of these events are recorded if you can't make it live. But part 4 is excited, scared, prepared, asking difficult questions. We understand there's an array of emotions you might be feeling when you're applying to graduate universities. So come voice those emotions. Let us know if you're excited, how you're feeling prepared, any sort of fears that we can help put at ease for you. And then part 5, that's a Q&A with program directors for the particular programs that you're applying for. So be sure if you have any final questions to join us for the particular program that you're applying, whether that be the PhD in Infant Early Childhood Development, or PhD in Media Psychology, or EDD in Leadership for Change, or the Human Development or Organizational Development and Change PhDs.
Wonderful. Thank you to all of my colleagues for that excellent information. We have a few questions now that have started in the chat, but feel free to add your others. Okay, so first question, great question. If my undergraduate studies were online via a school out of state and I had little to no interaction with them enough to remember me, how can I get a good academic reference? First, I'll talk generally. So this is why it's important to talk to your admissions person specifically about your situation and the program that you're applying to. It may be that it is not required that the program you're applying to requires an academic reference, or it may be that it doesn't make as much sense for you to get an academic reference. Maybe it makes more sense for you to get a professional reference. But that's why it's important to understand the program and what the program is looking for. That if there is a program such, again, I'll bring up the PhD in clinical psychology that does have very specific things that they're looking for in your references. In a situation like this, it may behoove of you to actually either do the post-bac program if you're considering the clinical PhD program, where you will actually have access to the faculty and will make those connections through the one-year post-bac that can help to write those recommendation letters for you, or some other way. But that's why it's important to connect with us and let us know your specific situation and the program that you're looking for, so we can guide you into what might be a good next step for you. Next question, another good question. How many years can an applicant list their professional accomplishments? As many as is relevant. So again, I know I mentioned something about page limits. We at Fielding don't have any page limits, but in general, as long as it's relevant to what you're telling us or what you're wanting to do, you should put it there. So don't worry about, I can only put the last 10 years or last 15, your resume is your entire career. So if it's relevant, if it's, something that you did, feel free to add that in there. Don't feel like you can only go back a certain number of years. Okay, 2 questions. One for the PhD in human development. There is a writing sample requirement. I have a 2-page article published in a magazine owned by a professional organization that I am a member of. Would that be sufficient? Caroline, can you speak to that?
Yes. So just to remind everybody, there are further instructions in the application for each section for the particular program you're applying. So be sure, if you're curious for the additional instructions, log in and take a look. And what Elia's referring to is there is a writing sample required for the PhD in human development, as well as the PhD in organizational development and change. Preferably, it should be a writing sample, a recent 5 to 10 page paper, preferably academic. However, if you don't have an applicable academic paper or thesis for these particular programs, you may submit a white paper, business report, or article from a newsletter or journal that has been single authored by you. So if it does meet that criteria, Elia, it could be something that you can submit. I'm happy to speak to you a little bit further one-on-one though, if you have additional questions. For your second question, how will I know if my transcript was received by Fielding? As Brian mentioned, there's a checklist for your application. As you progress through it, you'll begin to see those checkboxes marked. For example, the recommendation letters or those transcripts. Once you put the school information in, order those transcripts, and we receive it, our operations team will update that with a check mark and a note that says received. But again, we're all here to help. So if you have any questions, you can email admissions@fielding.edu and we can confirm those details.
Yes, thank you. The entire, what I hope you guys are picking up on is that we understand this is a very individualized process. So although we're giving very general tips and information, the team is here for you to talk about your individual goals, your individual experiences, and your questions. So thank you for that, Caroline. Okay, another good question. In the CV, can or should I add links to talks I have done and link to my publication library at ResearchGate or academia? Generally speaking, yes, if that's relevant, I would say yes to do that. I don't know if anybody else on my team has anything to add to that, but generally speaking, I would say yes. Okay, next question. Statement on Fielding admissions portal states, submit your official transcripts showing graduate degrees or coursework where it was mentioned that course-by-course evaluation is required. Can you please clarify the above? Caroline, I'm going to throw that back to you since you talked about international transcripts. Can you clarify that?
Sure. Well, what I can do is share some additional resources. Again, if your degree was earned outside of the US, it will need to undergo that international transcript evaluation. Otherwise, you just need to order an official transcript directly from your school where you earned your bachelor's degree or master's degree. Most schools now have an electronic process for that. So if they do, you can indicate that you'd like it sent to apply@fielding.edu. Otherwise, it can still be sent through traditional mail if that's the only option. And that would be sent to the headquarters here in Santa Barbara, California. That's the address on the bottom of all of our websites and on each of our signatures via email. But again, if you need that information, we can give it to you. And to see if, depending on the particular program you're applying for, just be sure to reach out to your admissions advisor and they can provide clarification on what might be needed exactly for your situation.
Great. Oh, another really good question. If I have credits from other graduate work that I think might be transferable, what is the process for getting those credits pre-approved? We do have a transfer credit process, and maybe someone from my team can post a link to that in the chat from our website. That's a great place to start to see what that looks like. And then we can, again, have further conversations one-on-one about what that could look like for you and what your next steps would be. Thank you. I see Caroline put in for our international applicants. Brian put in the link to the application workshop for our clinical applicants. So if someone can get that about the transfer credits, we'll make sure that you have that.
Yeah, Ignacio just added that in there.
Perfect.
Yep, so
Thank
be sure
you.
to take a look at that and reach back out with any other questions depending on the program you're applying for.
Okay, this next question is something we get a lot. Reference letters. I've been out of school since 2007. I doubt I could find my professors or if they would remember me. What do people do for academic references? Someone recommended I go back to school to take one course and ask that professor to write a reference. Depending on the program, that may or may not be the best way for you to go. And I'm sorry that I have a lot of general answers here, but that's what we do encourage you to reach out to us. For our clinical PhD program, you're definitely going to want academic references. So whether you go either, go back to school to do that, or you do the post-bac program at Fielding, that is generally going to be very helpful for you. For other programs, that may be completely unnecessary. So we encourage you to reach out to us, again, either individually or at admissions@fielding.edu. Tell us about your situation and what program you're interested in, or we could schedule a Zoom call with you or a phone call. Lots of different ways to make sure that you get that information. But it depends on the program whether or not that would be advisable or not. Thank you, Ignacio. Okay. Oh, good question. Brian, maybe you can speak to this. Can we change the selection of a program? Currently, the feature gets locked after the first section in the Fielding admissions portal.
Yeah, so if you start an application for a program and you would later on like to change that program, you do actually have to contact us to make that change. Once you complete those first 3 sections that we talked about before, those sections do lock. So you won't be able to go back and change the program itself without contacting us. But it's really easy to do. All you need to do is send us an email and then we can make that change for you.
Thank you.
And the same goes for the start term as well.
Oh, yes. A good comment actually came in about referring back to the prior question about CVs and listing links. It really is beneficial if you're talking about listing the links in lieu of actually writing out the experience. I would recommend that you write out the experience. You don't want to think about it like this. The committee is reading literally and sometimes hundreds of applications. So you don't want to make them take additional steps. You want to make sure that everything they need to see is easy for them to see in that one spot. So if you were referring to putting the links in lieu of listing it on your application, I would not recommend that. You can have a link out, but then you want to make sure you're listing everything. Don't make them take an extra step. Tomorrow, we're going to be sending an email containing the link to the recording of today's presentation and a link to the slides. If you don't receive it, please email us at admissions@fielding.edu. Next question, very good question. In terms of COVID-19 and the pandemic, is the program currently fully virtual? So depending on the right now, yes, all of our programs are operating virtually. Most of our programs, do operate virtually, with some with residential pieces. I can say, for instance, our summer intake programs. So the programs that we're having an intake this summer that Caroline mentioned before, the doctoral programs, typically we have an in-person orientation requirement. That is a week-long residency orientation in Santa Barbara. That is fully virtual right now for the summer. So that we know for sure. So we are definitely taking all the precautions to ensure that our current faculty, staff, students, and new students are safe. So at the time, yes, for summer programs, the resident orientation is virtual. I hope that helps. Can we pay by installments? That's a great question. Yes, we do have a monthly payment plan that we can work out with you. I would love for you to attend our webinar next week on funding your education. We are going to be talking about those options as well. Oh, good. Nashu gave payment options. Thank you. I think we are at the end of the hour, and we have all the questions answered that were up here. Should you have any other questions, please feel free to reach out to us at fielding.edu. Admissions at fielding.edu. I'm sorry that was sent direct message and not to everyone. But we want to thank everyone for their time today. We hope that this was helpful. Thank you for taking the time for yourself and for us for this information. Again, reach out to us directly, but we hope you have a wonderful rest of the day and hope to see you next week at our Funding Your Education event.